Mad Mike Hughes was probably the world's most famous flat earther, and by far the most eccentric. He was known mainly for his steam-powered rocket launched in March 2018, in which he encouraged the world to research flat Earth. Hughes was aware that his rocket would not launch him high enough to confirm the shape of the Earth. The idea was to raise awareness for the flat Earth theory. On February 22nd, 2020, Mike Hughes launched himself in another steam-powered rocket, which was not sponsored by flat earthers. Hughes was killed when his parachute system failed and he and his rocket crashed back down to the ground. I had the opportunity to interview Hughes last April as part of the research for an article I published on how flat earthers process information and build trust in sources. I linked this article in the description.
Please clap.
Initially, this video was supposed to be about how the majority of the flat earth community disliked and distrusted Hughes, even to the point of celebrating his death.
Let's get the obvious out of the way because the show on YouTube is going to be called The Rise and Fall of Mad Mike Hughes. Again, no play on words there. But I think it's a great title, which is true because it was a very, very quick rise and a even quicker fall. And so if you've been living under a rock for the last 72 hours, well, it was a spectacular crash. The only thing it didn't have was Hollywood flames. And if you're wondering, it's like, oh, respect to the dead, rest in peace. It's like, no. We're going to get into this.
But after looking into Hughes' background, I found out that he had some legal troubles. And by legal troubles, I mean 16 felony charges in order to pay over $11,000 in defendant's attorney's fees and a $650,000 bail payment that he somehow managed to make last October. So this video will be about those things. Hughes' legal problems also triggered some well-founded speculation that Hughes may have killed himself on purpose in his rocket launch. Speculation that I described in some detail on Flat Earth Radio Live in a time slot formerly hosted by Hughes. It seems more likely now, though, that Hughes simply died by accident doing a dangerous stunt. At most, he was indifferent to his death since he was facing potentially spending the rest of his life in prison. Hughes' first notable contact with the Flat Earth community was when he called into the Infinite Plane Society, or IPS, radio show hosted by the pseudonymous Tim Osman in June of 2017.
Jump. We're going to be looking with great interest. And what does it take to get a message on the side of your rocket?
Well, we're kind of looking for a main sponsor for this thing. Of course, it's a big area. It's like 22 inches by 8 foot long, white section in the middle of the rocket. And I'm trying to find the right thing for that. And I'm a believer in the flat Earth. And but anyway, to get back to the NASA thing. Most of those NASA astronauts are Freemasons. So
the Infinite Plane Society had previously put up research flat Earth billboards, including one that Mike Hughes saw. Mike was trying to finance a rocket launch at the time, and IPS and his listeners raised $7,100 according to Hughes, on the condition that he put the research flat Earth sign on the rocket. This launch is what triggered the widespread media attention that Hughes received. It did not take long for Hughes to become very controversial among flat earthers. There is a now infamous scene from the Denver Flat Earth Conference in November 2018, in which Hughes showed up uninvited to protest the event. He was eventually let in by the organizers, but the scene was evidence of the distrust many flat earthers had for him, and caused him to become further isolated. Flat earthers are also paranoid as shit, and are constantly accusing each other of being government plants. And Hughes' sudden fame and eccentric character convinced other flat earthers that he was working for the government to make flat earthers look stupid.
That is totally letting your guard down to be misled. I'm sorry, I cannot back fucking Mad Mike. Mad Mike was a disinformation agent. People he's associated with are disinformation agents, and I'll leave it at that.
When I first spoke with Mike Hughes in April of 2019, he was already saying that the other big names in Flat Earth, especially Mark Sargent, the unofficial spokesman for Flat Earth, were pushing him away and were intimidated by his fame. The feeling from Mike was mutual. He summarized his view of Mark Sargent to me like this.
Hey, Mark Sargent is a pussy.
In an effort to learn more about where this vitriol was coming from, I looked into a lawsuit that Hughes had filed against Mark Sargent in May of 2019. I've seen some of the court papers from this case, and I do recall Hughes telling me he planned to sue Sargent and that he trained himself in the law.
I'm a self-taught, I'm actually an attorney. I file my own lawsuits. I'm the prosecutor. I taught myself common law. I'm getting ready to go file 2 right now, 2 more tomorrow.
I called Hughes April 22nd, 2019, and the lawsuit was filed May 3rd, 2019. So when he referenced his various lawyerings, he had to have been referring to this, or at least had it in mind. Hughes described his legal theory in limited detail when he first called into the IPS radio show.
And once you realize, like what I did, is that even when your driver's license, when you get a passport, when you whatever, that name on that card is not you. It's a legal person / corporation. It's not you. And I've learned how to take that over, and I went after some big hitters right now, and I own their legal person name. Obama, Charles Manson, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, I own their legal person name. I'm trying to collect right now. Philip Spector, O.J. Simpson. Yes.
Basically, Hughes believed that you could buy the rights to somebody's name, such as Mark Sargent, and then sue anyone by that name on intellectual property grounds. He was also suing dozens of other people on this basis, though I suspect he had other bases as well. These people included the San Bernardino County Sheriff, John McMahon, several members of the California Franchise Tax Board, 2 California police officers, former California Governor Jerry Brown, California Senator Kamala Harris, California Attorney General Xavier Becerra, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and former President Barack Obama, although he was never able to prove service on any of these defendants. He sued dozens of others, in large part because the San Bernardino courthouse kept approving his fee waivers. The only case where they denied his fee waiver was also the shortest-lived lawsuit I can find on file. In total, he filed 27 lawsuits at the San Bernardino County Courthouse between March 2017 and December 2019, with some of them having over 10 defendants involved. I cannot say for certain if Hughes' criminal charges are related to his lawsuits against local authorities, since California doesn't turn over criminal records as easily as I had hoped. An acquaintance of Hughes, a reporter named Mike Pineda, made a possible connection between the lawsuits and the attempted extortion charges in a conversation with me.
Oh, right. So he's got a hard-on for all these guys, says they're corrupt in the government, and he's always going after them, trying to sue them. You know,
Right.
he's and he's his own lawyer, obviously. He's figured that out. He's basically saying they're all corrupt. So he calls them up and he tells them all that he owns their name, and if they don't come up with some type of finances, he's going to donate all their stuff to Toys for Tots.
Hughes' lawsuits may have been tied to his attempted extortion charges, and if he used fake identification over the course of buying the rights to people's names, then that may explain those charges as well, but I am unable to find out for sure. Some jurisdictions make arrest warrants public record, but apparently California doesn't. Many close to Hughes tell me that the authorities in San Bernardino County are very corrupt, and that Hughes wanted to fuck with them any way he could. But he certainly believed in his legal theory, since it is documented in the motion hearing in which he was ordered to pay $11,000 in attorney's fees last December. Hughes was arrested on his felony charges in September of 2019, and somehow managed to post an insane $650,000 bail on October 2nd. I still have no idea where he got this money. Some say the Science Channel, which was filming a TV show with Hughes, gave him the money, but the Science Channel won't answer my emails. Mike Pineda explained what Hughes' legal defense for these charges may have been.
Talked to Waldo after the incident, and he had said that he was working with the lawyer to try to go and kind of play like the insanity defense with Mike, and say like, look, the guy fucking hit his head. And
the main issue with an insanity plea, though, is that on September 26, 2019, Hughes was approved for a Feretta waiver, which means he has to represent himself in this felony case. So a judge said that he was not only sane enough to stand trial, but sane enough to represent himself, which means it would have been probably impossible for him to walk that back later and say, no, actually, I am too insane to stand trial, even if I am represented by an attorney. Meaning this defense probably would have gone nowhere. In other words, at the time of Hughes' death, he owed $11,000 in attorney's fees, may have owed a lot of money to a bondsman, and could have been facing decades in prison. Mike struggled to raise the $8,000 needed for his flat Earth rocket, so there's no way he could have come up with $11,000 on his own, much less $650,000. Some of my sources who were close to Hughes, such as Jeff Holbrook, the security guard for his rocket, tell me that Mike was not suicidal, and the crucial decision to not have an automatic deploying parachute, which could have saved Mike's life, was made in August of 2019, a month before Hughes was arrested. Fair enough, but the warrant for his arrest was issued in August also, but it's not clear if Hughes could have known about that. In fact, it's not clear if Hughes understood the gravity of the situation facing him at all. In the live radio shows hosted by Flat Earth Media Group, he still seemed optimistic about raising the millions of dollars required for him to go to space, to settle once and for all the shape of the Earth. He also spoke optimistically about his court cases. He seemed to believe that he may be able to win at least some of them, even though nearly all of them had been dismissed by January of 2020. As late as February 6th, 16 days before his death, he is still combatant and confident about his lawsuit against Paul McCartney of the Beatles.
A minute ago, you brought up Paul McCartney because you said the Beatles arrived right after Kennedy's assassination.
Yes.
Yes, what do you think about the idea that the original Paul McCartney died in 1965 in a car accident and was replaced?
Well, I'm trying to get the answer to that. For people that don't know, I claim James Paul McCartney. Now, I had his attorney served, which is Roman Swoops in San Francisco, and he got my summons squashed. And I threatened that guy with everything but bodily injury. So basically, the judge, she's actually a magistrate. I'm going to have to serve Paul McCartney. So I told his attorney, because he called in on the phone. They have this thing called court call now. For people that's not aware of this, most attorneys don't show up now. They just call into court, which is not even lawful either. You need to be there in your person. But anyway, I digress. So I said, okay, I'm going to serve Paul McCartney on tour by sheriff. I said, is that what you want? That's his attorney. And he wouldn't answer the question.
Hughes also had a very good memory of his cases. Whenever he referenced them in his live streams, he was always 100% accurate. He never embellished or misremembered anything. I tried to get the transcripts for some of these hearings, but they were beyond my means. Hughes's cases were always on his mind. If Hughes did decide to kill himself, he made this decision sometime after February 6th. February 6th was the last time he showed up to court, and the last time he spoke at length with optimism about anything, or at length about the future in any source I can find. He made no court appearances between the 6th and 22nd of February at the day of his death, even though he was due for 2 hearings. This isn't necessarily spectacular, since he did occasionally miss hearings, and he may have been busier than normal with rocket preparations. Killing himself with a defective parachute mechanism may have been his way of evading his legal fees and jail time. I have been working since his death on February 22nd to see if there's anything to this, but I cannot find a smoking gun. So I think we should default to the simplest explanation, which is that Hughes rolled the dice one too many times and died doing what he knew was dangerous. Unfortunately, I cannot ask Hughes what his plans were for his criminal and civil cases. For all I know, he had no plan at all. Mike Hughes had his own way of doing things, and was unlike anyone I have ever spoken to.